we're good now. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I don't know where we're at.
We were talking about the Eagles and J.J. Gardner-Johnson getting punched in the face and getting ejected. And then I don't know what you guys were talking because I was trying to fix the computer. Hi, YouTube. We had a slight malfunction on our first attempt of doing this, so we're doing it again. This is the Boat Row Boys podcast. It's me, Grassy Knoll, C-Money, Connor High. Izzy's not with us tonight. He's working, so that's our dad. What are your name? What's your name?
I'm what Izzy's going to look like in 30 years, probably.
I was gonna run with like a running joke and just continuously call you Izzy, and just be like,
what?
It would be like one of those TV shows where they just change the character and all of a sudden I'm now Izzy.
Yeah,
they recasted Izzy.
Yeah.
This is like in Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2.
Oh yeah, when it was
where Rhodey changes. You're now Don Cheadle.
That's right.
Yeah, we're in my house.
Don.
We're in my house down in Lancaster because Izzy is not available. So yeah, we're just new location for this week.
But the same dreams.
Same dreams. So yeah, Connor, you can continue on with what you were saying earlier. Audio listeners, there aren't any of you. You're fine.
That we know of. Anywho, so let's I know we're kind of talking defense a little bit. I think I do remember saying the defense kind of started falling apart when C.J. Gardner-Johnson left the game. I'm trying to remember because it felt like there was a good amount of injuries in the game. I know Jordan Davis got hurt and then came back. Slay was kind of in and out. Isaiah Rodgers, I know, kind of came in there at one point. Quinion Mitchell finally gave up a touchdown, which, I don't know, it just felt like a very uncharacteristic game for the defense.
Yeah, it did, and credit the Commanders because Washington, they are a legitimate playoff team.
No, they are. They are.
They have the job that Quinn has done in Washington is really impressive, and the turnaround of that team because they were awful last year under Ron Rivera, and he has essentially taken the same roster with the exception of Jaden Daniels, and really
he's a baller.
Really flip that. The season around. The franchise is going in a completely new direction.
It has. I mean, Jaden Daniels is absolutely a baller. I can't say enough good things about him. Like I think he's really showed out this year. I think he plays smart.
He's played hurt. He's played, his decision making, particularly in the fourth quarter, I thought was really impressive because he ran when he needed to, and he was an elusive runner. He was a much better scrambler than I remembered in the first game that when the Eagles played him.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that was with him with the sore ribs,
right?
But a healthy Jaden Daniels is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and I'm sure he's going to be amongst the conversation for Rookie of the Year.
I think you kind of look at it like there's two different types of scramblers in the NFL. You have and it's kind of the same thing with like running backs. You have your elusive scramblers, like you have your Lamar Jacksons, your Jaden Daniels, and then you kind of have your I'm just going to kind of run through you scramblers, which those are the guys you kind of have to look out for injury-wise. I think, Hurts kind of falls a little bit more so on the, I'm just going to bowl you over kind of vibe.
He does at times. He takes some really hard hits.
He does, which I prefer if he wouldn't, but it's kind of like how Cam Newton used to play a little bit too. And it's kind of the same thing. Like you have your Cam Newton and you have your Michael Vick,
Yeah.
So, I think that Jaden Daniels, if he can stay healthy, knees healthy, arm healthy. Like if he can just stay healthy, I think he's a great decision maker. I think he's for sure got some longevity, and it helps. I think Cliff Kingsbury's been really good for him too. I think he's got a good offensive game plan for them.
And the stat I think to remember is in the starting with 2000, the year 2000. Yeah, they always make such a big deal about how there has not been a consecutive division champ in 20 years now in the NFC East, and up to that game, the Eagles were undefeated in the division. And I think since the year 2000, it's only happened twice that teams have run the table in the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to note that because those games really are the rivalry games,
Well,
and
yeah.
that one last Sunday had every bit the feel of that.
All bets are off when it's it's an in-division game, just because there's that extra incentive for both teams. So I agree. Like it's hard to run the table, and Washington, like the way the Eagles were rolling, you'd won 11 in a row. Now, granted, Hurts goes out of the game. I think it was a trap game essentially. I think that's probably the best way to say it. Like things were rolling, things were looking good, but at the end of the day, I think it was a trap game. I will say, if there's one element of this game that actually frustrated me and maybe a little bit of concern, special teams.
Yeah.
Special teams got gashed.
Yeah, and I'm not just talking about the missed field goal from Jake Elliott. Like I'm primarily talking about the fact that the Commanders simply started on like the 45-yard line every single possession.
Yeah, Luke McCaffrey looked like an All-Pro against the Eagles special teams, which is concerning because now you have Turpin coming up this week with Dallas, who's arguably the best return man in football.
Why, like I understand the rules with the kickoff. Just kick it in the end zone. At this point,
I wonder if they actually had, if they were able to, because I know the wind was a factor on the field.
Yeah,
and it just didn't look like either team could kick the ball.
Yeah,
to the end zone. That just seemed like that was a problem.
Yeah,
and I know watching post game live on CSN Sports Philadelphia, and the one of the commentators was very critical of the fact that Elliott missed another 50-yard field goal attempt, but I think the wind was a factor in that as well because it was online.
That ball did get stood up.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
it was awfully. As soon as it left his foot, it was much higher than your typical 50-yard field goal attempt, and it landed just short.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I do think the wind played a factor. It was frustrating just because it seemed like every single time Washington was starting 35, 40, 45, like every single time they had great possession.
Yeah, they dominated field, the position and field position all game.
Well, even that last drive too. Like I'm pretty sure they started that last drive at like the 40-yard line, and it's a lot easier to go 60 yards than at least the length of the field. Like
every inch of the field matters in a 2 minutes in a 2-minute drive.
Exactly. So, are you guys concerned about the quarterback situation right now?
Long term, no.
Long term, no. Obviously, like I'm not necessarily. This isn't like a dig at Hurts. I'm more or less talking
for Sunday.
I'm talking for this week.
Are you confident in Kenny Pickett?
It's
we have to
more or
go
less
with
what
Kenny
I'm
Pickett?
asking. Do you guys feel good in Kenny Pickett if he is getting a full week of first team reps? It looked like a lot of his throws were late. Like timing wasn't quite there with a lot of the guys. Now, granted, here's a Devontae Smith drop away from winning that game, and granted, I know most of the points came off of the first quarter when they had 21 points, and a lot of the points after that came off of when they were driving the length of the field on penalties. But I don't know. I can't say I exactly watched Kenny Pickett, and I feel great about, if he were to take over as a starter for this week if Jalen Hurts is actually out with a concussion.
Well, Nolan and I watch every game together, and Grassy, I know you're not the biggest Kenny Pickett fan.
Yeah, neither are you.
Well, the thing that concerned me about Kenny Pickett wasn't necessarily his accuracy.
His decision making.
It was his inability to sense pressure.
He's
oh my
dumb.
gosh, that one blitz, like he had just a free rusher off him.
Yeah.
And he didn't sense it at all. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you could see it, like, in the line. All you have to do is just get it out quick. And he did it. He just stared down the receiver. And then he got laid out.
Yeah, I think, with you had mentioned injuries with throughout that game. What I'm not even so much concerned about Jalen Hurts because I think he'll be ready to go come playoff time, which ultimately that's the most important thing.
Right.
But what concerns me the most is the defensive ends because they lost 3 guys had to leave at one point or another.
And it's Sweat. I
And they
think he
got-
had an ankle injury.
And,
Yeah, but
they,
he
and he
came
did
back, though.
tried to come back and make
Hang on, let
be
me
a gamer.
let me look at the injury list and see what.
But
we're dealing with.
unfortunately, when they lost their edge rush, they had nothing to offer. That was when the defense started to get chewed up.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, if I remember right from the injury report, the only ones that didn't practice were Hurts and Will Shipley.
Yes, AJ limited participation, N'Kobe limited, Josh Sweat limited, and everybody else was full participation for their injuries.
So the one thing I think that the Eagles have shown the ability to do this year, much different than last year, is they've shown the ability to learn from their mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And while I don't know if they're gonna go to battle against the Cowboys with all their weapons, particularly Jalen Hurts, I think the rest of the team is going to be certainly more focused than they were against the Commanders, and I think you're going to get a more disciplined effort than what we got on Sunday.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I just want them to win. And then just get a win, and then go get healthy.
Yeah, at
I
this
mean, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but like your shots at the 1 seed are gone at this point. Like you need 2 different things to happen for the 1 seed. So at this point, get the win Sunday, rest your starters, get healthy for the playoffs when it matters.
I guess the real question is Saquon going to hit 2,000 yards?
If he's got to put up a big game against Dallas, if
He's two. They just showed on the TV. He's 268 yards away from breaking the record.
Who was I discussing it with?
He's less than. He's at what 1837 or something like that.
Yeah.
Was I discussing? I think it was with you, Dad. About if he gets close, he'll play against the Giants. But if he doesn't get close, then I think they should rest him.
You know, the nice thing about Saquon, and the thing I respect about him a lot, is that he, at the end of the day, while they did an article and he talked about how much the records are important, he also is a team player. And if the team's in a situation where he's better off sitting and waiting till the next week for the playoffs or whatever, I think the record's going to stay intact with Dickerson. I think that the last 2 teams, the Giants and Cowboys, are going to completely – Kenny Pickett is going to have to win against the Cowboys. They are not going to let Barkley beat them.
No, and that was the thing with Washington too. I mean, the Commanders essentially said we're not going to let Saquon beat us. I mean, they were
first half he did.
Well, yeah,
First
because
quarter.
The
Oh, yeah,
first
that's what I'm
quarter
saying.
When
First
Jalen
quarter.
Hurts was still in the game.
When Jalen Hurts was in the game, yeah, because you have to
You have
you
to
have to
account
stay
for
honest.
everybody,
But the
but-
problem is they became one-dimensional.
When Jalen was in the game, we were joking, remember, Noel, because we said he was going to, based on the first quarter stats, that he was on pace for like 28 carries and 440 yards.
We thought we thought he was going to hit 200.
I genuinely thought, and after the 68-yard touchdown run, 68-yard touchdown run, I thought Saquon was going to break the record
Yeah.
right then and there.
Yeah.
But
God, does he look like Landon Dickerson?
what, the tackle there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, when did he get on the Bears?
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Also, listen, I do really like Joe Davis, and
I like Joe Davis, the baseball commentator. I was not a fan of what the producers on Fox were saying to him during this game.
How many times do we hear 5 turnovers, and they're still somehow in this game?
What really made me mad was when they were like, "This is spectacular! How unprecedented is this?" And we're like, "Come on, guys! Like, don't be jamming this shit down our throats here. Like this, like." I mean, how many times did I sit here very quietly and then they said something and then I just go, "Shut the fuck up, Greg."
Everybody loves the underdog, Noel.
I
do.
get that.
They really
I
do.
get that. But like, don't repeat it 5 different times whenever somebody scores.
Back in the days when Connor did radio and when I did radio, we used to do like a game of the week format, and that's what you did too, Connor.
Yeah.
So the intriguing story is the upset.
David versus Goliath.
Yeah,
everybody loves the David.
That's what usually draws everybody's attention first, is when an upset is in the mix. That's naturally what the announcers gravitate towards. and they could see it building. You could see it happening.
Well, yeah, I mean,
these
you
guys
could,
are
you
acting
could,
like it's a 16 versus 1 matchup. Like,
you could see it from a mile away, and again though, like the way that game was looking early, yeah, it looked like the Eagles were getting ready to blow them out of the water, and then unfortunately their starting quarterback got hurt, and like I said, we became one-dimensional. We couldn't do anything on offense, and defensively we kind of fell apart there as soon as like you said, the pass rush left, and then Gardner Johnson got kicked out of the game. So
And despite all that, they were one play away
one
from
play.
winning.
They were one play. They lost by 3,
One play
including
away.
a missed field goal in there too.
So
and they lost by 1 play.
So let's wipe out last week. Let's look at Dallas because it is Cowboys week, and as Eagles fans, there's nothing better, nothing sweeter than an Eagles win and a Dallas loss in the same weekend. I'm sorry.
and to clinch the division too.
Yeah, I mean that would, to me,
And the Kelly Greens.
I would much rather do it this week than next week, as an Eagles fan.
I agree.
Yeah, just this, like I said, take it this week, and get healthy for the playoffs.
Also, CeeDee Lamb isn't playing on Sunday, so he's going to miss the last 2 games. But
What did he do?
He's ducking Cooper DeJean. He's got some shoulder injury that I think they're shutting him down
Is
for.
it the same shoulder injury he had?
Yeah, it's had a lingering
Yeah.
shoulder issue all season.
Yeah, so he won't be playing. So, and I guess I haven't even really been following Dallas. Are they still playing Cooper Rush?
Yes,
Cooper
Prescott
Rush,
was
yeah.
out for the
I
year.
mean, Cooper Rush is
What
a
is the
quality
point
backup.
what is the point of Trey Lance?
Seriously,
honestly,
Seriously.
What was the whole point of that?
here's
they
and
spent a
I'm,
third on him too.
I'm just saying this as an Eagles fan. All right, if the Kenny Pickett experience turns out to be less than ideal, I would make a play for Trey Lance.
Yeah.
Well,
You have a similar type player to Jalen Hurts,
wait, hang on.
and I would you. The nice thing about having a backup like him would be you wouldn't have to change the offense.
Yeah, I feel like Kenny, you do have to change the offense.
Yeah, you have a quarterback with a good arm and scrambling ability, very similar to what your starter has.
Well, and I guess also to that point is the Eagles, for whatever reason, have like 3 very different quarterbacks.
Well, I love
Tanner
all
McKee.
love Tanner
No,
McKee.
no, don't get me wrong. I love Tanner McKee, but Tanner McKee is kind of like your prototypical like pocket passer, like stand in the pocket, like gunslinger.
Yeah, but Tanner McKee sees the field at a different speed than Kenny Pickett. I'm sorry.
Here's the thing.
He's got a better arm too.
Jalen is the I'm gonna extend a play when I have to. I'm gonna scramble. Tanner is the I'm gonna stand in the pocket and I'm gonna throw a dart. And Kenny is none of it. Kenny is baby hands.
Although he did throw that touchdown, he was 3 for 3 on that drive when he came in
That's
off
true.
the bench.
Kenny-
You know, WIP was licking their chops after that drive too.
Kenny, I know you're watching this. I only joke.
Now WIP was like quarterback controversy,
They were chomping at the bit.
and
for
then
that
he immediately
story.
throws an interception, I think, on his next throw, and
Right.
Yeah, and
that
they
went
said,
out the
"Damn."
window. Yeah.
Got no story this week.
Yeah. Speaking of stories, it has been a little bit of a lack of story for this offseason for the Phillies up until this past week.
Hey, Dombrowski heard me.
Yeah, no one went on this whole like 5 minute
I went
long.
on a 2 minute.
It was
rant
longer than
about
2 minutes.
Huh?
It was longer than 2
Was it?
minutes. Oh yeah.
It must have been heated. It was a 5 minute rant about how they did literally nothing and expect the same outcome, or they were doing nothing and expecting a different outcome, and then literally the next day, they signed Max Kepler, and I saw that and I go, oh my God, Max Kepler, who is he?
That's right.
I asked you.
Running through the house. Who is he?
I asked you. You didn't know. I called Connor.
I knew the name.
I
didn't
knew-
know-
I also knew
yeah.
the name.
Everybody
yeah.
knew the name.
We
but
were all like,
nobody knows who Max Kepler is. I'm like, I've heard the name.
The funny thing is, we're all like, yeah, I know the name Max Kepler. It's like I know him from the Twins, and it's like, but what has he really
Like-
done? And I mean, he was solid in 2023. It's just he had a bad 2024.
Oh, and according to this logic here, DK is not getting in trouble at all.
He, Max Kepler reminds me an awful lot of like a David Dahl, who
No,
was
that's
with the
not very
Phillies.
ins- that's
Who
not
was
very
with the Phillies
inspiring.
last year. Although, David Dahl had a very serious shoulder injury, but Kepler also had dealt with injuries the 1 year and is kind of on the way back.
And the thing that they have already said that Kepler's going to be their everyday left fielder, which probably means that Marshall probably be like seeing, I'd say, like 60 to 70% of the time in center.
Right.
With a mix of Johan out there.
I think they need another right-handed bat out there in the outfield.
I agree.
I'm not necessarily a big fan of Rojas just because he has now had 2 seasons in the majors to improve his plate, his plate ability, and I just don't see it as far as him being able to. I mean, probably a great season from Johan Rojas. It'll probably be about a 230, 240 average. When I think that position can bring you so much more than that.
And I would say, like, I've been kind of calling out. I mean, I think we need another right-handed bat to at least protect Bryce in the lineup. And in theory, yeah, it should be Nick Castellanos.
I have to throw it out there because two players that gave you some of your best at bats in the postseason last year were Kelly Clemens and Weston Wilson.
Yeah,
Cody
that's
Clemens.
True. Yeah,
Cody Clemens.
Cody Clemens, sorry. But Clemens and Wilson, they showed me enough that I think they could look to have their role expanded a little bit. Well, especially Wilson. Wilson has done nothing but produce since when he was called up.
He's got a nice little bat. I would not mind seeing him get more time.
And he plays multiple positions.
He does.
He's kind of like who was the guy they traded to Detroit?
Vierling.
Vierling, yeah, Matt Vierling.
How could you forget Matt Vierling?
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, the car shield guy.
He was in Double-A for like 6 years. How could you forget Matt Vierling?
No, Matt Vierling, he almost had an all-star season with the Tigers this past year.
Good for him. I'm happy for him.
No, me too.
Where's Maton?
He either stashed somewhere.
He's not in Detroit. I know
Last
that.
I saw, he was with Minnesota, I thought.
Ooh, was it Baltimore?
No.
Or was that his brother?
Phil?
Yeah, Phil's not on the Astros anymore.
So, no, I know you and I have had many, many back and forths about this, in that I think that you think that they should have made more moves. I say
yes.
I don't want to pull a Ruben Amaro and jeopardize your minor league system just to make a couple of deals, just because you need to feel like you need to make a couple of deals. I mean, to me, like one of the trades that really set the franchise back was when they went out and got Hunter Pence, and then a year later they get rid of him.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you could have probably used Hunter Pence. Hunter Pence was only like 26 when they traded
27.
him. Yeah, I mean, he was not old at all. And then he goes and gets traded to San Fran and becomes did he get traded? Yeah, it was traded to San Fran, and then he becomes a mainstay there and wins
2 World Series.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think they should have just kept Pence and just built around him, but that's probably a conversation for another time.
I'm not saying that they need to make a deal to make a deal. I'm saying they need to make a deal because we've seen the same outcome happen in 2 different postseason appearances.
Well, I understand that, and I have said to you that there have been GMs over the years, and it's a very select few, that when they are patient, I trust them that there isn't a move to be made out there. One of them was Pat Gillick, and Pat Gillick won 3 world titles with 2 different teams. And the other one is Dave Dombrowski.
Yeah.
Dave Dombrowski has proven that he knows how to run an organization not just at the major league level. And I don't want to see them get rid of their key pieces in the minors just for a 1-year run when you're already knocking on the door. And I don't want to see them get rid of young talent for washed-up veterans.
See, but didn't we discuss this earlier that, I don't think it was on the podcast, but didn't we discuss it that if they were going to make a deal for somebody via trade, they would have to extend them? Like, it couldn't be a one and done. They'd have to extend a guy.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. Like, I wouldn't say they have to extend them.
Kyle Tucker. If the Phillies were to make, which they did, if the Phillies were to get Kyle Tucker,
if they would have traded for Kyle Tucker,
you have to extend him.
Yes, I would say you would have had to have extended.
I think that's what I'm like. I forget who I said it to, but like, you want to. you want to send somebody. If you're sending these guys away, who are supposed to be the future of your organization, for a superstar of the now, you extend the guy now. It happens in every single trade. It's what happened to Mookie. It's what happened to Xander Bogaerts. It's what happened to like a bunch of these guys. They get traded on a 1 year and then they immediately get signed because the other team didn't want to extend them.
Well, I mean, the Padres didn't lock up Soto.
It's true. I mean, that was probably their goal.
I don't think they could have extended him that much.
Well, I think that was their goal, was to trade for Soto and then eventually sign him.
They were hoping to put pieces around him that he would want to stay.
Well, he was still 2 years away from 6 years of service, so yeah. I mean, they dealt him because he didn't want to play for him.
And then he got traded to the Yankees, and everybody thought the Yankees were going to be able to re-sign him, and here he is a New York Met.
Yeah.
Stupid Mets.
I will say the one deal that I the one that everybody's kind of talking about with Dave being back is Jesus Luzardo.
Mm-hmm.
That is a great trade.
I think so. I agree with that. That is a great GM trade.
It's not a name that was floated around much, but it is a guy that in limited, be it limited postseason action, was successful.
Yes, he was successful, and he's had a little bit of an injury past, but he's also a guy who you don't have to worry about signing within the next year or two. They still have some control.
He's under control to 2026.
Right, so they have at least 2 seasons of control, and it gives them time to evaluate him and see if he's somebody, because they have to think ahead, because Ranger Suarez is going to be a free agent after 2025. So it may come down to, do you want to keep Ranger and sign him to a big contract, or is Luzardo going to be his replacement?
It kind of, now you look at the rotation, because I was telling Nolan, I was like, Luzardo is essentially, in most cases, it's probably a 3 or 4. Or, yeah, about a 3 or a 4. So probably even like a 2 in most rotations.
I've heard when he's healthy, he's a legit number 2 starter.
Yeah. In this rotation, he's probably a 3 or a 4. Potentially maybe a 5, depending on how they want to lay out, which isn't necessarily a knock on him. It's just saying how good the Phillies rotation is.
Right, and this trade gives them the best rotation in baseball, hands down.
100%. It gives them depth at the position too. You go Wheeler. You could probably mix in, if you do want to do like a righty-lefty kind of thing, go Wheeler. You could go Sanchez, go Aaron Nola, go Jesus Luzardo, you go Ranger Suarez. And then if you want, you could probably, it won't be right away, but you can mix Painter in later on in the season. I just think right there, that 5 is the best rotation in baseball. I mean, pitching is what's going to carry you in the postseason at the end of the day.
I'm of the opinion that one of the 2 top arms, whether it's Mick Abel or Andrew Painter, I would really like to see the Phillies try and develop them as a back of the rotation, back of the closer.
I would probably see that more likely with Abel.
I think you could probably get, a guy who can probably hit triple digits. I think it would be pretty awesome if you could get a guy. Instead of trying to trade, the Phillies have never, with the exception of Brad Lidge, and you got 1 season out of him, the Phillies have never had success trading for a closer. They had, Jose Mesa and John. Well, I mean, Papelbon was a free agent. Jose Mesa is probably maybe their best trade. I guess you could go back into the 90s and say Mitch Williams. They have not had a whole lot of luck with closers and trading for them. And I don't know if that's really going to change. I think you need your best arms, because the Braves do it all the time. Your best arms are brought up from your farm system.
Kind of to go along with that point is when Jonathan Papelbon is your franchise all-time leader in saves, and he's here for what, 2 years, 3 years?
Well, he ended up with, I think it was 107. So I think it was like 3.5 seasons.
With, again, and it's not even like the Phillies were even all that good.
I think he might be eligible for the Wall of Fame.
Which really is saying something. Like, yeah. I just Papelbon, that was an experience. But, yeah, I mean, essentially to your point is, no, the Phillies have not had a whole lot of luck with closers. And quite frankly, this past season, I kind of wish that they'd kind of stuck with Jeff Hoffman more so in the closer role. Even when they traded for Estevez, he was just too shaky, in my opinion. I don't know. It just always felt like there was somebody scoring whenever he'd come on.
They need somebody who is an effective sinker ball pitcher. I think you and I talked about it just once. And I said to Estevez, I just don't like the idea of getting a fly ball closer in Citizens Bank Park. I think you're only asking for trouble when you do that. And with him when you see a guy that, he throws 99 miles an hour, but it's the straightest fastball that you ever saw.
And he leaves it up most times.
Yeah, you're going to get fly balls.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously it seems like Estevez isn't coming back. Jeff Hoffman, we're even kind of point where, it's very unlikely that he comes back, it kind of seems.
He should be a starter somewhere.
That's what he's going for, apparently. But they just went and signed, what was his name, Joe Ross?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, who, again, not the prettiest. Actually, strike that. He actually was very good out of the bullpen. He did not have a good year as a starter, but he was actually very solid out of the bullpen. So he came from the Brewers. I think the splits were he had like a 5 ERA as a starter, and then it was like a 1 point something in the bullpen.
I in a way, I would almost wish that they would hand the job to Kirkring, Orion Kirkring.
He's got the stuff.
He has the stuff, and I think you just give him the job and let him fight through the growing pains of the early part of the season. I think there's a reason why he shot through 4 levels of baseball in the minors in one season.
Yeah.
So
and he was a great setup man last year.
He was, and I think out of all the arms, he probably has the one fastball that probably would induce more ground ball outs. Hoffman does too, but I think unfortunately for Hoffman, he's one of those guys that you can pretty much tell right away in an inning if he lets like the first batter or two reach base, he's done.
Yeah. I also don't hate the idea with Strom either. Like Strom, he had his moments last year where he was certainly lights out.
Strom is, I love him for his toughness and for a guy who doesn't have an overpowering fastball to be able to go out there, and he never backs away from a challenge.
No, he's got the stuff. Like, he's got good, where it's like a Kirkring, he's got the fastball slurve or sweep or whatever it's called. Strom, he's got a little bit better mix of arsenal. And again, it's not necessarily just pumping fastballs in there at 90, 99 to 100. He's actually got like a good mix of, he's got a good sense of like location, and it just, didn't really seem to be that way in the playoffs. But
it's a shame that Alvarado's not even part of this conversation, because the guy has the best stuff. Probably you could almost say in the National League, he's got the best stuff. Like, the guy hardly ever gives up a home run, and just when he's on, he's unhittable.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you get his head straight and get him to be consistent, because he'll go through a 2-month stretch where he's unhittable, and then all of a sudden he can't get anybody out.
Yeah. Yeah, I know last year he had that little stint where he was he kind of needed to get his mojo back, and it kind of seemed like he was kind of getting it back towards the end of the season, but I think we were too late in the season at that point before he was like, we would say he's back. So, but I do think he's still got the stuff. I think it's just a matter of being able to locate it, which was his main problem before coming to Philly, and then 2022 kind of seemed like he picked it up again, and last year seemed like it fell off a little bit again. So, I don't know. I'm a believer in Alvarado. I really do like Jose, and I think he'll continue to get. He'll be right there in the rotation. I'm curious what role he plays, if it's going to be like that setup man, or if they're kind of leaning more towards Strom.
Okay.
Or if it's just kind of like a, hey, go eat some innings kind of guy.
So as the team stands right now, you look into your crystal ball, guys, and what do you see win-wise? Do you see them repeating as division champs? Do you see them making a deep run in the playoffs? Like, where do you see the team right now as it stands?
Where do I see the team? Well, offensively, they're about the same. Pitching is better. I would certainly make the case that their pitching is better. They've got better depth at the position, and I don't necessarily think you're going to have to rely on Tyler Phillips to go out and give you 15 starts next year, or who else did they march out there? Colby Allard. They're going to have to march him out as much as what they did. Hopefully, we don't have to see much of Taijuan Walker at all.
He's got to be done.
You would think so. You would think he'd be done. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, right now, the way I see it, offensively, I don't know if I would say they're better, but I would say they were good enough to win 95 games last season. Braves are going to get healthy again.
And the Mets.
And the Mets now have Soto. And the Mets, they had that great finish to last year. So, I don't know.
I mean, the thing with the Mets is they did what the Phillies did in 2022, where they kind of snuck up on people. Especially they got hot at the right time at the very end of the year.
Right.
Now, especially with having a name like Soto on your team, you're not going to surprise anybody.
No, you're not flying under the radar anymore. I mean, you're essentially public enemy number one now. You're now the team that went out and signed Juan Soto to a 700, however much it was, 780?
They're 65.
Yeah, whatever it was, $765 million contract. So you guys are the bad boys now.
And you say the Phillies have been quiet, but, I mean, really, what moves have the Braves done?
Braves,
They
I have
haven't
not heard
done
anything. And they actually lost.
They let Max Fried go.
Yeah.
If anything, they lost.
They are getting Strider back, which will be big.
Yeah.
Acuna.
And they are getting Acuna back.
But when are they getting Strider back?
This year.
Yeah, but when this year?
That's a good question because I don't really know.
And,
Tommy John's a pitch.
now Ronald Acuna Jr., who, for all of his immense talent and ability, has had 2 season-ending seasons with major injuries in the last 3 years.
Right.
So is he going to kind of go down the road of the injury-prone superstar?
That's a possibility.
Didn't we discuss this one time? When's his contract up?
Acuna?
Yeah.
Didn't they just
They
sign him for
they extended it.
Did
Yeah.
they extend him?
He's got a big extension.
Yeah, he got a big extension. It wasn't for a ton of money, but he did get a big extension. It was that Braves contract where they somehow, lots of years for little money kind of deal.
Yeah.
I think the division itself is going to be really competitive
I agree.
because you have the Nationals.
They've got a good young core.
They actually showed a little something at the end of the year. If they can improve on that, and the Mets and Braves and Phillies, they're all. I would say if you were a betting guy, you would go into the season with those 3 probably at even strength.
Yeah.
It would be anybody's division between the 3, although I think the Phillies pitching puts them over the Braves, and I don't think that the Mets pitching is going to stay as hot as they were at the end of the year.
I would absolutely say the Phillies pitching has the Braves and Mets beat. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. Lineup-wise, I would probably say this is all fully healthy. Braves probably have a slight edge lineup-wise. And then I'd probably say the Phillies and Mets are pretty close. Because I still feel like the Mets have question marks. I'm not 100% no matter what, even with them signing Juan Soto.
Yeah, who's going to play first base for him?
Yeah, that's the thing. I still think that you have too many question marks. There are definitely going to be guys that there were definitely guys that exceeded expectations last year.
I mean, who was that third baseman that just destroyed the Phillies in the playoffs?
Vientos?
Vientos.
Yeah.
I mean, do you really think he
That's
is
what I'm saying.
the next up-and-coming all-star third baseman in the National League? I don't think
He
so.
had a
He could-
great 2 series.
He could absolutely prove me wrong, but he is one of those guys that I think just got hot at the right time. And I don't know, just outside of signing Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor was scolding hot.
I mean, Lindor's legit. I mean, he's been doing it for years, and but the rest of the team, I think, you have some role players. They're not superstars.
No.
Mimo Nemo is not a superstar.
No. Jeff McNeil is not a superstar.
No, they're not.
And you're now probably losing Pete Alonso. So again,
What's
you know,
up with what? Where is he going?
He's, you know,
Where?
he's waiting the market out.
But like, what? Who needs a first baseman?
It's a great question.
That's like what team other than the Mets need a first baseman? Like,
well, I don't know. It partially makes me wonder if they're gonna find some sort of like short deal, like 1 or 2 year contract. And
the Cody Bellinger treatment.
Well, the longer it drags out, the more likely it is that he will re-sign with the Mets.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Is his agent Boris?
I think so.
It makes sense.
He'll probably, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think he'll sign like a 1 or 2 year deal to just stay with the Mets at that point, because he's probably waiting it out to see how much money he can get. But again, I don't really think there's a huge market for a first baseman right now, unless he were to end up going to, I don't know, like Chicago, like the White Sox. Like, who just at that point would just bring in anybody, or even go, even sign with Sacramento.
I mean,
the Sacramento Athletics.
Could you imagine being a White Sox fan right now?
It must be.
Can you imagine being an A's fan right now?
It must absolutely be terrible.
I on Facebook they would show pictures of the White Sox Stadium, Comiskey Park in the summertime while games are being played, and even though the official announced attendance, because they factor in season ticket holders, they actually would count the number of fans that were in the stadium, and sometimes they would be less than 100.
That's
how horrible
crazy.
It was.
That is crazy.
Weren't they supposed to be a really good playoff team like 3 years ago?
When Tony La Russa was still managing, they were,
because that was the Tim
contender,
Anderson. That was the Tim Anderson era of Chicago White Sox when
no, you're right.
when he would hit everything.
Now he hits absolutely
and
nothing.
Benintendi was supposed to be like.
Yeah, Benintendi. I do
he was
remember him
he was
there.
supposed to be the guy because they played that great game.
Luis Robert. I mean, he should be better than what he actually is.
Well, they played the Field of Dreams game.
Yeah,
and they won. They won in
against
extra
the
innings,
Yankees,
and
yeah.
it was like a 7-6 game. It was a great game.
Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of been on the fence with like Luis Robert if like we should actually make a play for him, because I mean he would be a nice right-handed power bat in the lineup, but my complaint on him is the fact that he hit like a $180. Like essentially, I feel like he just. I mean, he's better in the outfield than Schwarber is.
He hits like Kyle Schwarber.
That's what I'm saying. I think you're just signing up for another Kyle Schwarber, where you're just again a boom or bust, which I don't think they really need right now. I think you just kind of need a guy that can get on base and, and hit for average a little bit.
It goes back to an old theory of mine that when players change leagues, the power numbers may stay similar, but the strikeouts go up and the batting average drops.
Right.
When you're switching leagues, because a lot of cases, while it's like I said, it's not what it used to be, where there was that much separation between the National and American leagues, but there's still a lot of unfamiliarity, especially when you're getting deep into ball games and you're seeing pitchers that you've never seen before.
Right.
That can really impact, a guy's ability to make contact and let's face it, it's the modern age of ball player where they're going to strike out more.
Right. All right. So let's talk a little Sixers here before we close things out. Sixers are rolling a little bit better than what they were to start the season.
A little bit better.
All right, a lot better.
They're winning. They're finally
winning games. They are actually
winning
games. The Tyrese Maxey that we were kind of waiting for has finally showed up. They are 8-3 over their last 11 games, including a big win on Christmas Day against the Celtics, which I don't think anybody really saw coming, to be honest with you.
No, not at all.
I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you. I wasn't really expecting much. But, I mean, the fact that Maxey had as big a game as what he did. Paul George, even though he's not necessarily, like, scoring to the volume that he normally does, he is still playing very impactful basketball. He's been probably their best defender, I'd say. And playmaking has been really big for him, which I think it's a team that kind of desperately needs it. Which I would probably... I know they're going to be looking at power forward at the trade deadline, but I would argue that they could probably be looking at point guard just as much. just as somebody to facilitate a little bit better and like kind of let Maxey do his thing as a scorer a little bit more. But no, like I said, big game against the Celtics yesterday, and they came away with a win and kind of seem like they're moving and grooving a little bit better, kind of figuring each other out as they go. And I mean, Caleb Martin said it last night too. It's kind of expected with, when you have 8 new guys and, it's a completely new team. So I'm starting to kind of believe again, if you will.
Can we talk about the other game that happened?
You want to talk about the double ejections?
Kinda.
All right.
Kinda.
Yeah, I mean, that was a rough crew, man. I know you don't really watch, but
No.
The one
NBA officials are the worst in sports.
The one
no,
time,
they are.
The
It's
one
a
time
ref
I
show.
actually watched a 76ers game, I look over, I texted Connor, and I go, "What is happening? Why is now all of a sudden it gets interesting because these refs can't make up their minds?"
I have a problem with the NBA right now and its officiating, and like I think they enable too many whistles. I think it's very ticky-tack, and I don't think half the time even guys know what kind of calls they're getting.
Calling. Can you?
And too many guys play into flopping.
Yeah, literally.
Like Victor Wembanyama the other day.
Yeah,
So-
can you explain to Dad what happened?
So essentially,
Because I know he didn't watch it.
like Andre Drummond is guarding Wembanyama on an inbound play, and
Yes.
Wembanyama he just goes flying, he sells a flop. All right, so the ref comes out of nowhere and ejects Andre Drummond.
No. That happened. That was before the ejection.
Yeah, she ejected Andre Drummond.
No, he had a foul against him before he ejected him, or she ejected him.
Regardless, though,
Are you talking about the one on the inbound?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the earlier one. That
No.
Okay,
I'm talking about the one on the inbound, and Wembanyama goes flying, and she just
She
literally just comes flying at the bottom,
like
of the screen
like a
and
kid on
tosses him.
Christmas. Just
and that's probably the most animated I've seen Andre Drummond since being a Sixer. So they kick him Drummond out, and then they go to review because Nurse is livid, Drummond's livid, and then it's like, oh, Wembanyama flopped. Okay, we're gonna uneject you, so you get back in the
he
game.
got unejected. She went over to Nick Nurse and goes, "Okay, I fucked up." Quote unquote, literally.
That's literally what she said.
Exactly
Yeah.
what she said. She
Verbatim.
goes, "I fucked up. He can come back."
And then so he comes back, and they're like, all right, well, you get a technical for flopping, and then
Give him a tag.
and then the Sixers shoot the free throw, and then they rescind the technical. So
what did they make the free throw?
they made the free throw, and
Yeah,
then
and then it didn't count.
And then they took
it
the point
off.
away.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is what we were dealing with. All right.
So
And then-
anybody listening or watching this podcast, if you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix, and it's called The Untold Story, and it is on the betting scandal in the NBA with former referee Tim Donaghy, who actually is from the Philadelphia suburbs of Delaware County, and that it talks about some of the games that those guys used to do as crews,
Mm-hmm.
and it had nothing to do with the actual sport itself.
Well, so and then my question, it wasn't Scott Foster linked with that
Yes,
too?
Yes, he
Scott
was.
Foster.
Yeah,
was the
so
name.
and Scott Foster's the number one head referee in all of the NBA, So then it gets worse because Embiid gets called for offensive foul, which he was out of control. Did I think Wembanyama was moving his feet? Probably, but Embiid gets called for an offensive foul, voices his displeasure to the ref. She then in his face gives
Same
him
ref.
same ref gives him a technical. He becomes irate, and then that's when she tosses him out of the game, and then everybody becomes irate, and Embiid then gets tossed out of the game. And it was actually kind of a good thing that he got tossed because I think at that point the Sixers banded together, and were Tyrese Maxey was like, "Listen, I'm going to take this game into my own hands."
So there's a movie that came out with Billy Crystal it was the late 90s, early 2000s. It might have been the 90s.
Uh-huh.
Movie's called Forget Paris.
Okay.
And Billy's character was an NBA ref.
Okay.
All right.
Which I
So-
feel like suits Billy Crystal really well. But go on.
The one scene is where he was being bothered by stuff that was happening off the court, and he just has this complete meltdown during the game and starts ejecting everybody.
Oh yeah, I do remember. I do remember this.
Where Kareem Abdul-Jabbar comes up and says, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you kicking me out for? This is my farewell game." And Billy's like, "Well, let me be the first to say farewell." And like he double technicals him. He kicks out Charles Barkley. He just starts ejecting everybody. It kind of sounds
some guy
like
just
that.
starts laughing. He goes, "Oh, what are you laughing at? Technical foul. You're gone."
Yeah. I mean, it was just an absolute. And then to make matters worse, so Sixers, it's a close game. They finally gained some momentum. And I got to say, Gershon Yabusele has been a fantastic pickup for the Sixers. He's probably, honestly, been their best offseason signing, if I'm being completely honest. And that's even considering Paul George and Caleb Martin and Andre Drummond. Like, I think he's actually been like the best signing this free agency.
The one thing I hope that the Sixers as a franchise do is that they give Nick Nurse some latitude, because I really think he's a really outstanding coach.
No, I agree. I love Nick Nurse. And I think he's total, like, their defense has essentially been what's kept them in these games. And I think now that guys are kind of finding a groove, like they know where to be out on the floor, they kind of know how they like playing. I think you're kind of seeing his offense take shape. But defensively, yes, I think he's always had it defensively. Like they're just clogging up the lane, and I think you can even look at Tyrese Maxey. Like Maxey last year was an average defender, but I don't think it's crazy to say that he's been an above average defender this season. Like he's taken his defensive game to a whole nother level.
Is it fair to say that this is now Maxey's team?
I think you could have said that at the start. Yeah, at the start of well, even last year. Yeah,
in the playoffs especially.
Yeah, when Embiid went out last year, I think this is when it became Tyrese Maxey's team. And I think I said it, if you look back at episodes in the offseason, I said that the Sixers should play with Maxey as the number one option, which is kind of what they've been doing. I think the problem is they've just been trying to find a groove that like works for him, because the points were there, just the consistency, the efficiency wasn't quite there.
Yeah, there's guys on the team that unfortunately can't build plays around, like Kelly Oubre. Oubre is such a great.
He's a freak
flyer.
Athlete. He's a freak athlete.
He's your perfect garbage point kind of guy.
He is, and I think the thing with Oubre though is I think he, like, you can kind of put him in that dunker spot, and I think he's a great slasher, But I think outside of that, like, his 3-point shot's a little inconsistent for my liking for a shooting guard. He has kind of picked it up from that Josh Hart kind of role that the Knicks utilize with him. Like, I think he's actually kind of been playing that a little bit better, where he's just been a dog on the boards.
I think they nailed the draft pick with McCain, though.
I really do. Like, that's who I wanted. I think, you get somebody like him that can just spot up, shoot those no-dip threes. Like,
he just seems to play with he plays with a high level of maturity about him.
Very mature, and he's got a high level of confidence to him.
He reminds me a lot of like a Jalen Brunson type player.
Yeah, and I mean, they asked him after the one game too. They're like, your 3-point shot, like, you seem like you're pretty confident. He's like, yeah, like I'm confident in it because I've worked so hard at it. Like, I'm not going to change anything about it. Like, it's worked for me. Like, so. I do really like the Jared McCain draft. Like, I think it's actually played out really well for him. I'd still like the Paul George signing. You still have all your assets for the trade deadline and any future moves you want to make. And again, I think Paul George has actually been big for Joel too. From he's even said, like, with the injuries, Paul George has kind of gone through his fair share of injuries over the course of his career. So even though like the shots aren't falling right now for him, I think he's still playing with a high level IQ. He's been great on the boards. He's been picking up, he's been a facilitator for him. Again, I think it would benefit the Sixers to go out and get like a bona fide playmaking point guard. Like, obviously, I know Chris Paul's with the Spurs, but if you can go out and get a guy like Chris Paul, like, I would have liked to have gotten like Tyus Jones or like Chris Dunn in the offseason, but unfortunately that didn't quite happen.
Bring back T.J. McConnell.
I don't think T.J. McConnell's going anywhere anytime soon.
Damn.
I think he's pretty much locked up with the Pacers there.
Who's the kid that they had that won the slam dunk competition?
Mac McClung.
There you go. I'm sure he's available for a song.
He's a G League player.
He can dunk. I'll give him that. Yeah, no. So I mean, I do like the progress that we've made over the last few weeks. I mean, we're now 11-17, which again
something like
doesn't
that.
sound great, but for considering how terrible of a start we got off to,
At one point, what they were like 1-11.
I think we were as
They-
bad as like 2-12 at one point.
They were the worst team in the NBA for the first like month and a half of the season.
No, they were, and I don't think it was particularly close. And the crazy thing is
Oh no,
the crazy
Gino, what
the
are
crazy
you doing?
thing is they. It's not even like they would play bad basketball. I mean, they would, but I mean, their defense wasn't quite there. Like, guys would just be hitting these crazy shots again. Like you watch the games against the Hornets. Yeah, they beat the Hornets every time, but the Hornets were just going this roll where they're just hitting 3 after 3 after 3, and the Sixers aren't really built like that. Like, I think a lot of the teams in the NBA have kind of built themselves as a dominant 3-point shooting team, where the Sixers really aren't that. And obviously losing Jared McCain, who's probably one of your best 3-point shooters on the year with the meniscus tear, like, I think it hurts them. But you're kind of seeing what this team could be the last couple of weeks with all 3 of your stars healthy.
Maybe they could make a trade and bring Marco Bellinelli out of retirement. What do you say, Noel?
Nolan's a big Marco Bellinelli guy. You know what's funny? We had the Sixers game on a couple weeks ago, and every time that Eric Gordon would touch the ball, me and Izzy would boo him, and he would knock down the 3. It was like a carbon copy. I was like, this is crazy. But
Should we? I do have one question for Dad though, because we made our not list, but we voiced our opinions on this topic here, and I do want to get your opinion on it.
that's where I think you're going with it.
What?
Just ask the question.
What is who is your most hated Philadelphia athlete?
That's not where I thought you were going with that.
What do you think I was gonna say?
Nothing.
Who's my most hated
What do you think I was gonna say?
Philadelphia athlete? Well, I don't hate any Philadelphia athletes.
No. Like of all time, like whoever, like any point of your fandom of watching any of these teams.
So is there like a minimum number of
No.
games that they?
No, as long as they were here. I mean,
Wow. I mean, now this goes back some years.
I think I said Scott Rowland.
I didn't hate Scott Rowland.
No.
No, I did not. I was actually a Scott Rowland
I think they
fan.
had to play. I think they had to play at least one game. I think that was our requirement because
Yeah, because JD Drew. I mean, that he never actually played for the Phillies.
everybody said who was the one dude? Andrew Bynum.
Yeah, we
Bynum was one of them, but he didn't play.
He never
never
suited
played.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because there have been many players with fleas. I'll say that over the years. There was a player that I remember seeing in person play for the Phillies in the mid '90s. His name was Mark Whitten, and Mark Whitten was this big. I mean, he was a massive. Like he was like 6'3", 6'4". He was a switch hitting outfielder, and he had a year with the Cardinals. I think it was in '93. He hit four home runs in one game, and like tied the major league record for RBIs in a game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy was just bursting with ability. And the Phillies traded for him because he kind of had a falling out with St. Louis. So he goes to the Phillies, and it was like one of his first games at the Vet. And he hits a ground ball to second base and all but walked over to the dugout. I don't think he ran to first base.
Yeah.
And the fans just unloaded on him.
Oh, I'm
and,
sure.
And I don't know if he was there more than I don't know if he was there more than a month. Like every time he got on the field, the fans were they crucified him.
Yeah.
And deservedly so, because he was a guy that obviously, what Philadelphia fans gravitate towards is the grit and the hustle and loving what you do. And when you have somebody out there who clearly doesn't care whether you win or lose or whether he plays or doesn't play, that's the kind of player that Philadelphia fans just don't accept.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably one of the first names that comes to mind would be Mark Whitten.
Weirdly enough for me, I didn't say him as my most hated, but Jerry Bayless for some reason.
Jared Bayless.
I never liked Jared Bayless when he was with the Sixers.
Okay.
I'm trying to think who else was on my list. I did say Scott Rowland. Jonathan Papelbon I didn't like. I don't know if I would consider him my most hated, but I did not like Jonathan Papelbon. Jason Babin.
Okay.
I think I included on mine.
I know as a Sixers fan, we were so excited to see the potential of Sean Bradley.
Oh
And-
yeah.
And when they drafted him, and what an utter disappointment. I mean, the Sixers franchise probably leads Philadelphia sports in disappointments with players that you probably can't stand. I mean, Sean Bradley probably hits that list. Markelle Fultz probably hits that list.
I don't have as big an issue with Markelle Fultz as what I think a lot of. I mean, I don't know, because Fultz like that wasn't necessarily his fault. I think that was just a freak incident. I would say Ben Simmons makes that list.
I hate you.
Ben
know,
Simmons
I
absolutely
said,
makes that list.
I said Ben Simmons. I hate Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I would Ben Simmons. I definitely think makes that list, and I'm sure there's people that say Tobias Harris, but I don't.
Harris
I don't hate,
played hard.
He did. He always played hard. If his shot wasn't falling, he was playing great defense. Like, I think he really stepped it up on the defensive end, even the last couple years. Like, did he fall well short of expectations in the contract? Yeah, he did. But
Well, you're right. You can't fault a player when a franchise offers you a contract. What are you going to do? Say, well,
I'm not worth that.
I'm not worth that, guys. Sorry. Why don't you take about 30, 40 million off that deal?
Because you know what? Essentially, the Sixers were saving face. They didn't want to come away with their two trades with absolutely nothing. And once they realized that Jimmy Butler wasn't signing back, then they were like, okay, we need to at least bring back one of these guys. And it wasn't necessarily, I mean, we've talked about it before, at least me and Izzy. It's not like they were choosing between Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris. They were choosing between Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler.
Well, now that we are talking like that era with the Ben Simmons, I think I'm going to toss Mark Whitten aside, and Ben's probably my most hated most hated Philadelphia athlete of all time.
Yeah,
he's literally what turned me away from the Sixers because as you guys, we were a part of the process. We watched them when they were awful.
You and I were we were front and center for a lot of those games, as terrible as what they were, and then Ben Simmons kind of comes into the picture, and there was a glimmer of hope because he's supposed to be the next. Everybody's supposed to be the next LeBron, but this guy was supposed to be just freak athlete, do it all on the basketball court, and then he just refused to shoot the basketball, and then he refused to get any better at shooting the basketball. Even if he wasn't shooting, he just refused to do it, and then it just got to the point where you play a series against the Atlanta Hawks, and they're sending him to the free throw line time and time again because he just refuses to. He can't hit the shots. So.
But then, famously passed up the dunk where he was standing right underneath the basket.
He's standing right underneath the basket. Trey Young. Ben Simmons is 6'10". And
6'11", yeah.
Yeah, and Trey Young is all of what, 6'2"?
I mean, they list him at 6'2". He's probably about 6 feet tall.
Yeah, and you're gonna just pass to Matisse Thybulle.
And I miss Matisse Thybulle.
I don't really miss Matisse Thybulle.
Okay, well, you're heartless.
Ben Simmons to me is the classic example of a great athlete who doesn't love what he does.
No, he is somebody that is a basketball player for the celebrity status. I don't think he loves and breathes the game like a lot of people do. Like LeBron or Steph or like a KD. I think they genuinely I think they are basketball people where everything they do is basketball.
Well, they're driven. I mean, Jimmy Butler, those guys, they want to be the best. They want to be the best player on the floor.
Exactly.
Ben, we never got that. Never got to see that.
No.
Where he wanted to take a game over. He never did that as a player. So.
I'm trying to think. Who else is on my list of most hated? I mean, Nnamdi Asomugha kind of came to mind, but again, I don't think that was
Marco Murray.
But see, again, that wasn't DeMarco Murray's fault that he was as bad with the Eagles. Like, I think that was just terrible coaching. You know.
He didn't play, but Chip Kelly I always hate.
Yeah, I mean, can you include coaches in that? Because there have been some really, really bad coaches.
Ruben
Well, I'm
Amaro,
sure
Ruben
you-
Amaro Jr.
Well, he was a general manager.
I don't care.
I mean, I guess it technically was a first base coach for the Red Sox, but
I don't. I mean, I still hate him.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if we're talking GMs and coaches, then yeah, there's probably some guys that are pretty high up on that list.
I mean, Ruben was the Phillies bat boy
Matt
at one time.
Klentak.
Yeah, that's true. No, you know what? I don't hate Matt Klentak.
Really?
I don't hate Matt Klentak. I actually think that Matt Klentak is part of the reason why the Phillies have what they have now. He could go out and he'll get the big names. The problem is he couldn't fill. Like he doesn't do what Dombrowski does. So he doesn't fill the rest of the talent.
Well, that's where the great GMs, that's their ability. And
Not to necessarily say I think Matt Klentak was a good GM, because I don't think he was.
no.
But I think he got the big names. Like he went out and he got Bryce Harper. He went out and he got JT Realmuto.
Did he go out and do it?
He
or
may
did,
not have
or
gotten.
did
That was probably more Middleton, but I'm
Was
saying
it,
or did Middleton basically do all the recruiting?
Jake Arrieta.
yeah,
That
Jake
was a big
Arrieta,
signing the 1 year.
that wasn't
Carlos
necessarily
Santana.
He did sign Aaron Nola to that team friendly deal. Like he jumped on that right away, and he did kind of do the same with Odubel Herrera, even though
Even though he's a double Herrera.
yeah, I was gonna say that one didn't turn out as great. I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was the one that got Zach Wheeler too, wasn't he?
I think you're right.
Yeah. So I
Well, let's be honest there, because Zach Wheeler, the reason that he signed with the Phillies is because his wife is from this area,
well yeah
and they had always talked about doing something like that, living closer to her family.
well the Zach Wheeler signing very easily could have blown up in their faces, kind of like Jake Arrieta did.
Right.
But it's worked out very well for the Phillies, and even so to the point where they even gave him a longer extension. So I give Klentak credit where credit is due. Like I do think he got the big names. I just don't think he was able to go and find those, make those Brandon Marsh type trades or Edmundo Sosa or, I'm trying to think of some other names that he's brought in.
Dombrowski and Gillick, both of those guys got their start in Major League Baseball as scouts. So at the end of the day, they're able to evaluate with their own eyes,
Mm-hmm.
versus always taking somebody
He's
else's
down. He's got to be down.
word for it.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference when you can when you have the final say, and you can look at a player's talent and say, yes, he can fit in, or know a clubhouse well enough to know that his personality is going to fit in as well.
Right.
And I think that's where Klentak, what he lacked was where the great GMs, and let's face it, it's rare.
Yeah.
They're not easily found, or guys that have that type of ability. But what's his name up there with the Yankees has been able to have a Brian Cashman.
Mm-hmm.
He was a scout at one time before he got into being the assistant GM.
Yeah.
Those guys, they are good talent evaluators.
Yeah. Yeah. Any closing thoughts, boys?
Just beat the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Beat the Cowboys.
Beat the
Yeah.
Cowboys.
Beat the Cowboys. Win the division.
Yeah. Go Kenny, go.
Yeah. If that kind of seems to be the way we're trending, especially with tomorrow being Friday and Hurts yet to practice. So,
I would love to see Saquon break the rushing record, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
Saquon Barkley goes 300 yards against the
I would like
against
to.
the Cowboys.
I would like to just mention real quick how funny it was that Jalen Hurts thought that a thumbs up to the ref would keep him in the game.
I'm okay.
Yeah, just quick thumbs up. Yeah, he's fine.
I'm good.
I do think that it's not the first time against Washington this season that he's been concussed. I do think he was also concussed the last game too, and nobody took him out of the game for whatever. Even though apparently he did go through concussion protocol, allegedly. I definitely think he was concussed though for that game.
I just think that the rails came off after he left the game. Probably he plays the whole game and is healthy. I think the Eagles won that one going away because at that point it was 21-7, and I think there was no looking back. I think they would have cruised.
To be honest though, even without a healthy Jalen Hurts, like I think
you almost lost to Kenny Pickett.
Well, I'm saying, like, even if Jalen Hurts is even just, like, standing there, like, I think you probably still win that game. Like, I don't know. That's just me. Because at least you still have the element of, like, hey, like, you know, Jalen Hurts could still take off at any point, or, you know, Jalen Hurts could still beat us with his arm. You know, you just become less one-dimensional.
Yeah.
But, hey, like you said, we'll be in the Kelly Greens, you know. We're playing Dallas, chance to win the division. Let's just get it done. Let's get to the playoffs, and we'll call it a
That's
day.
a touchdown.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Spring training starts in about 6 weeks.
Trust the process, baby. So, to all you wonderful people out there.
That was a touchdown. Yeah, that was a touchdown. Yeah, that was a defensive touchdown.
Wow,
Yeah.
all right.
I knew that.
Look
yeah.
at that. Look at you, Chicago. But, anywho.
Good for him for finishing out the play.
Tyler Lockett is not a happy camper.
Before you say your thing,
Oh, yeah, say your things.
be sure to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, Boat Row Boys. Be sure to give us a follow on Spotify. And what's the other one?
YouTube.
No, the other one.
Facebook?
No, the other one.
Instagram?
Apple Podcast.
Oh.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
it
Apple
is.
Podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Shout out to hang on. Follow us on Twitter at Boat Row Boys. Shout out to all you boaters out there listening. Shout out to C Money Connor. Shout out Dad. Thank you for hopping on the episode.
I'm Izzy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Shout out to
That's
Izzy.
Izzy over here.
Whatever Izzy's doing right now.
Izzy did want me to tell everybody to wish the boaters a very Merry Christmas
Hope you guys had a great Christmas. We
And
look forward.
Hanukkah.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait.
and Kwanzaa.
Yeah. When's the next? Hang on. Connor, keep talking, please.
Well, we hope you all enjoyed listening as much as what we enjoyed talking to you, and
Depending on when we record this next episode, actually, it will be out next week. We'll see y'all next year because it'll be New Year 2025.
more likely than not. So yeah, we hope you all have a wonderful night and stay beautiful.
Later.
Go Birds.